And now it is time for our one-on-one conversation with Dean Tong, Managing Director, Group Human Resources, UOB Group. So, Dean, I think you've already been through the study and you've seen how the focus on adaptability is so major, especially in the times that we're living in right now. So the moment crisis hit us, it was about, adapting to the change that came with the crisis. So what does adaptability mean to you in today's context as we look at your business, your organization in particular?
So at HR, we define our mission as future-proofing the organization and our people, right? So in that lies the notion of adaptability. When we talk about future, no one knows exactly how the future will pan out. Because if we do, then we would not be doing what we are actually doing today. The fact that there's a lot of variables involved in the future, it means that there's a chance what you're predicting is actually not going to come true. And hence, the ability to change course and to adapt is actually something very important. Mm-hmm. Now, specifically, when I talk about adaptability in the context of HR, I look at actually two things. One, from a strategy side, my ability to mobilize my resources or remobilize my resources, if you will, when times changes. For a lot of traditional organizations which has been built on very deep silos, this is something that you find extremely difficult to do, right? And in times when you actually need to move, and this COVID situation actually proved to be a real test ahead of time for many industries. And you will see that for the more adaptable organization, they were able to switch and redeploy some of their resources in areas where they most needed it during this period of time. So that's one set of it, which is from an organization perspective. The other perspective to this is from a people angle. And this is where we actually look at the skills that people have and what an organization needs to do to reskill our people so that they become more adaptable. At UOB, this is actually at the heart of our reskilling exercise. Last year, I spoke to you about Better You, and Better You was actually built upon this premise of how do we make our employees more adaptable for the future? Because we actually recognize the problem upfront that whilst we may actually know how some of the frontline jobs may evolve over the next few years, for example, a teller becoming more from a digital a teller behind the screen. For most part of the jobs, we actually don't know how it's going to change and when it's going to change. We know it's going to change, but the exact order and the exact shape, we actually do not know that. So the only way to prepare our people is to make sure that we actually plant the right seed to make sure that they are actually more adaptable. And with that, we focus on a few areas and mostly on soft skills, starting with the growth mindset, and then followed by digital awareness, and then problem solving, data storytelling, human-centered design. So these were the 5 areas that we focus on. If you look at this, these are all not specific to any job functions, but these are skill sets. If you master it, you can actually apply it across multiple areas. And one analogy that I always use is one of the most adaptable industries in the world is actually consulting, right? If you work on one project, you become an expert in that area. If you work on 2 projects, then you become a guru in that particular topic. And that's because you are supposed to actually pick up the skill very quickly, and not only are you able to spar with your client, but you need to be able to advise them as well. So the learning curve is actually very steep. And then the questions that I ask myself is that why can we not inject some of those agility, if you will, in an organization that we actually worked in? Because we actually required a lot of the same skill sets in order to actually move from the different job that we do, and also from function to function. Hence, this was actually really the bedrock and the basis, which is in line with your study that you come up with, that adaptability being one of the actually key feature, and that's been our focus since we started the transformation.
Great, great. Thanks, Dean. I think, yes, I do remember our conversation on Better You and how you've already upskilled, I think, more than 26,000 employees under that program, if I'm correct.
The plan is to upskill 26,000. We have not completed the journey yet, but we are in the process of doing so. Yeah.
So has it accelerated the current scene? Has it accelerated the whole learning curve in your organization?
It definitely have. In fact, this COVID situation was a real test for the people who actually have gone through the Better You training. I spoke to some of them directly. This whole growth mindset module, when this thing hit us, instead of looking at where the problems lie, they're actually looking at it to say where are the solutions, and they are very quickly being able to actually adapt to the new situation and to look for the silver lining in how you actually approach customers, how you engage them using some of the digital tools that we have. So that's precisely what we wanted to do, right? To plant that seed so that when situation like this were to hit us, it becomes easier for us to move. Since then, what we have done is that because in our original program, we have a mixture of classroom training, a one-day classroom training, plus a 12-week e-learning. Since COVID hit us, we couldn't do the one-day in-person training. What we have done is that we have actually digitized the experience. It's not simply about taking everything to become to deliver all digital, but we have to rethink about how to replicate the experience, but also leveraging the strength of a digital platform. And what we found is that instead of sort of water down the experience, we could actually do things which we previously couldn't do. For example, using digital tool, people were actually a lot more open to ask questions. And when you can transport them to sort of different breakout groups and sort of facilitate a lot of the different discussion, so we started to use that. But what is important is that we still need, at least for that particular experience, a live experience. So this is not a recorded digital experience. It is a live experience using a digital channel to actually deliver it, right? So keeping the spirit, you can actually make it even more effective.
Yes, absolutely agree. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Very great points, Dean. Shashwat, Dean spoke about how the consulting profession itself is about agility and adaptability. Would you like to comment on that, since you've been in the field for more than 20 years?
So Dean has first kind of questioned my career goals. So Dean, I've been doing HR transformation for 20 years. So yeah, hopefully I've continued to grow. But Dean has been very accurate because, and Dean, whenever I take someone into consulting, my first challenge is to new one management trainee coming in and getting into consulting is, do you really want to be in consulting? And for lack of a better word, I used to say that you need to have a consulting ego. It's not about your manager, mentor, or hierarchy. You need to feel proud around the product you are going to deliver. It will carry your name, which will mean that before that is published, how can a quality or anyone can comment on it? You need to really develop yourself. So it's also about your hunger to learn and grow. And the other thing, which is currently Dean today talked about as growth mindset, success in the old partner days used to be around founders mindset. It's a very similar thing, concept, is that look at as the firm being yours and do not really get into the idea of someone else will solve that problem for you. If you start seeing a problem, get into the mode of solving instead of throwing a stone. So it's fundamental mindset change. Challenges don't go away, but you start solutioning that. And to Dean's point, when he said that, I think the point which is very valid is around HR owning up employees' future. I think that's where, if you look at in HR transformation, focus on 3-pillar model, last 15, 20 years, somewhere it got let go of. And that's where in many ways, Asian organizations, I will say, are ahead than global organizations. Because now going forward, if you are saying that organization capability, culture, values, these are the anchors on which you will compete. If you have not taken care of employees and you have lost that trusteeship, how are you planning to compete on those anchors? And that's where I think Asian organizations have been unique, and then it's needed. And that's how 3-pillar model, Dean, I am now convinced is not going to work. there is a certainly hidden fourth or fifth pillar, and people need to recognize that.
So moving on now, Dean, my question to you is, you've been through the study already. So what are some of those trends in the study that resonate the most with you as you're experimenting in your organization in these times?
I mean, most of the trends I can actually resonate with, but if I were to single out a couple of points, I think the first point of HR transformation enabling sort of the business transformation itself. So when I first came on board to UOB, I've actually created a new department within HR itself. It's called strategic HR. And what I wanted to do was to actually bridge the business and HR together. So I need people who actually understands business, who is able to actually provide a business solution. And there, I actually assemble a team of people from various walks of life. Many of them have actually consulting background in the past to actually coming together. My plan is to subsequently inject them to the different parts of my HR pillar, right? So this strategic HR team will not remain constant, but it will actually start to evolve. And one of the first component of my people transformation is what we call strategic workforce planning. Essentially what it is that you take the business strategy and you translate that into people and organization requirements. And you ask questions not only for using a one-year perspective, but you're actually looking at it from a longer term perspective. And in banking terms, we actually usually take 3 years. Anything longer is a wishful thinking that things will stay constant. Anything shorter might be too myopic in nature. So 3 years is actually how we actually look at it. And we use that to actually drive a lot of our people planning. How many people do we need to recruit? What capability do we need to recruit? How do we deploy them within the organization? How do I manage for performance? How many people can I afford to promote? And how do I promote a performance culture? And if in case I have access to people, how do I redeploy them within the organization? And if they cannot, right, how do I reskill them ahead of time? So all these questions are all linked together. And you have to see this as a huge a puzzle that has to be solved together and not in isolation of the individual pieces. Right? So that is actually one of the trends which I resonate, as I said. HR has a very important role to enable the business transformation. The other trend that I saw was that digital being a key component of the HR transformation, and that's a process that we are going through as well. Mm-hmm. We are in the process to actually replace our HR core with a cloud system, and the solution itself is only an excuse for me to relook at some of my processes in place today to make sure that I'm able to use it to influence the employee experience, as well as redesign processes using human-centered angle, right? And so despite times like this, like the COVID, where we actually are relooking at the whole priority of the investment that we're making, UOB still prioritizes this investment as an important investment for us to continue on with.
Mm-hmm. Great points. Thank you. I think, yes, it's so true that business acumen is one of the capabilities that our research also, highlighted quite a bit, some large number of responses there. So Shashwat, would you like to add to that, and also to the fact that digital is going to be key for, managing, be it employee experience or compliance or other elements?
Yeah, so Dean did point out, because digital on its own doesn't have value. So when used correctly, it enables experience as at one end and compliance at the other end. So seemingly two very contradictory thing happens together when you get the digital piece right. So nothing else to add on this. So
yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah, great. So Dean, while some of these trends are really key for the kind of times you're living in right now, I would also like to ask you, how would some of these trends be amplified as we move into the future? So as business is looking at us as HR leaders, what do we do?
I actually believe that one of the biggest challenge that we have, and maybe this is actually captured implicitly in one of the trends that you have, is the need for reskilling. And this is extremely important, and it's also a national agenda in Singapore, and rightfully so. Because if you look at the number one challenge that we are facing with as we go through some of the disruption, and the COVID situation has accelerated this disruption, is how do you actually prepare the workforce for the future? So moving towards this future itself, we have to pull together the various trends that you actually talked about to really come up with a holistic solution in reskilling. I believe that HR has actually a very important role to play here, because we actually have direct influence to many components of the ecosystem of this solution that we're actually looking for. Let me give you some example.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of recruiting, in some organization, there could be a preference for you to actually hire ready candidate outside than to groom your own people, because first of all, it takes a lot more time. Secondly, there's no guarantee that the person that you groom might actually stay with you. So why not just buy a ready-made candidate outside? And for some of the workforce that you have today, whether you're actually willing to invest in them or not, or again, you actually go out to buy a ready-made candidate. And how do you manage performance? In more traditional organization, performance management may not be managed as strictly, if you will, compared to multinationals or even some of the, I would say, stricter organization. But there are always implications. If you don't manage that, then you might actually create a bulge somewhere where people may not be carrying their weight as well. So if you start to look through an organization and where the problem lies, and if reskilling is indeed a big priority for you moving forward, then you need to find a way to address the issue from the different part of this value chain. And ideally, they would actually fit into each other. And for example, right, I actually, in today's COVID situation, approved all the headcount that we are actually hiring. We are still hiring, and we're hiring strategically in areas where it is important for us in the future. But when I actually look at some of those, my question that I'll ask the business is that, have you considered someone internally, right? Someone that you can actually reskill before we actually look outside. Now, if they were to do so, for every 2 attrition, I might allow them to actually replace with 1 regularly. But if you're actually considering an internal candidate, I might allow you to replace both the people that you have lost. So to create some sort of an internal incentive, if you will, such that the ecosystem starts to move, we give people incentive to actually reskill. And reskilling is only one part of it, but taking a chance on the individual once they have actually reskilled is actually very important. And therefore, that ecosystem needs to be created from an end-to-end standpoint, right? So for me, the trend that is moving forward, if you will, I think this will be an important trend to actually be watching closely.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, because this COVID situation brought forward these many questions on front of organizations, whether they have the right skills already, or are they focusing on creating the right skills? Are they future-proofing their employees? Because, and whether they are outsourcing that, or whether internally developing their people. So very great points there. Shashwat, would you like to comment on that?
So, in fact, Dean, I liked you time and again saying reskilling, then learning or training, because I fundamentally believe that learning, whether normal or digital, has failed because they have taken a learning only view of it. Because it's not learning only. Reskilling could be about, once you create hunger in someone to kind of learn and change skill, it could be around access to resources, it could be around various things, and learning is a small component. So that difference, while it's nuanced, it's fundamentally a different approach than pushing learning. Howsoever good it could be, micro learning and different, but learning has a mindset which is learning. Reskilling or enabling a success of individual business or otherwise actually is beyond learning, because then individual will look at different opportunities. So that's the nuance I thought was really good.
Yes, totally agree. Thank you, Shashwat, for adding to that. So my final question to you, Dean, since we're speaking about reskilling and having the right capabilities and skills for the future, so how are you accelerating the changes in your HR function in particular?
Accelerating this in HR is a big priority for me. I'm actually looking at it from three different angles. First, as I mentioned before, having the tool to actually do more. And this is where we're investing in the technology. So moving to a cloud system and using that to change employee experience, use that to really make our process a lot more efficient so that my guys and gals can really focus on more strategic issues and working with the businesses. Second, as I reskill the larger organization, I need to reskill HR as well. Because traditionally, I mean, HR, if you will, has actually been very much focused on very specialized areas. Today, I need more people who are able to connect dots, right? And ability to actually see a problem and to solve that using the multiple tracks that you have within HR. So cannot be looking at this problem from a very silo standpoint. So we're actually taking the team through various tracks of reskilling, depending on which area they are. But ultimately, one of the commonalities across those reskilling is to ensure that they are able to solve problems and they're able to connect dots. And last but not least, is on the engagement side. So I am also spending a lot of time to ensure that my people see the job of HR beyond just a 9 to 5, or in our case, a 9 to 6 job. Because if you do so, that's through some of the changes and the difficult times, such as the COVID situation, it becomes very hard for you to adapt to it. But if you see this as something that holds a bigger meaning and purpose for them, and if they can see how they actually fit into the larger picture of future-proofing the organization and the people, then it just changes the equation. Right? It gives you a lot more fuel and energy to persevere through some of these uncertain times and the disruption we are about to experience.
Great, thanks. I really like the deep focus UOB as a group has on reskilling. I think that's a really good example for other organizations because that helps them sail through any tough times, be it today or in the future. So thanks, some great points shared, Dean. Thank you so much, Shashwat. Since we are also talking about how the ways of working are changing for the HR function, what are your views on how HR function can accelerate itself going forward?
So I guess Dean must already be doing it because now, if you ask me, all the experience with HR transformation for all these years, uh, there was a cadence to it, and you always thought that the ways of working of HR will change in the end. But actually, if you look at it in hindsight, there is no guarantee that the ways of working will change in the end. So, as an organization, you actually benefit to make that ways of working change begin day one itself, because it actually helps, because once the ways of working starts changing day one, it also creates right kind of demand for your platform or any implementation, because then you start looking at your demand very differently, and it leads very different kind of results. So if you ask me, last 18 months or so in our real working, that has been a big aha moment. So we have been now saying to client that, as someone who does more technology than I will say cultural change now, not, because we are no more a talent consulting organization, we actually tell clients that switch your ways of working in HR first before you start HR transformation, and there has been unexpected gains from that.
Mm.
Great. Thanks, Shashwat. So on that note, we come to the end of this interview. So thank you once again, Dean, for sharing such interesting insight with us and taking us through the journey of UOB of continuous improvement. And I seriously believe that you're doing a commendable job at it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you. And thanks, Shashwat, for sharing these insights with us, from being adaptable, business centered, to being, it about having adoption at heart, being data driven. Eventually, HR transformation is about business transformation. So thank you so much for taking through that. So ladies and gentlemen, this was it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we did curating it for you. Thank you so much once again, and see you in the next episode.